the Tennessee Titans, to me, are the NFL's biggest mystery team because they could be good enough to win the AFC South, and they also could be bad enough where they finish in last place and they don't win any more than 5 games, because this is a team that, when you think of their quarterback and Will Levis, he showed a lot of flash last year. Remember, he bursted onto the scene in his debut and threw 4 touchdowns against the Atlanta Falcons. And then he had a pretty good performance against the Miami Dolphins. But outside of those 2 games, there was a lot of mid to below average QB play in between those 2 performances. And we still don't really know just how truly good Will Levis is. Some people are quick to anoint this dude as the franchise quarterback that the Tennessee Titans have been looking for. He has a great arm. He's a really good athlete. But we've seen this story a couple of years ago with Drew Lock. Because remember, Drew Lock, when he got in and he was starting for the Denver Broncos, the last couple of games of his rookie season, he was pretty good. As a matter of fact, I believe that he went 5-0, 4-1 as a starter. But then, following his sophomore season, he didn't look good at all. He got Vic Fangio fired. And you bring in Brian Callahan as your head coach. He's going to be calling the plays. He's a first-time play caller. He's never called plays before. Yeah, he did have a role in Joe Burrow's development and his success, but mainly Zach Taylor was the dude who was in charge of helping Joe Burrow reach that level. So there's concerns about how good Will Levis is. Is he really the franchise quarterback that the Tennessee Titans believe he can be or is? And then Brian Callahan, how good is his play calling going to be? But let's say Brian Callahan ends up being a good play caller and Will Levis ends up panning out to actually be the Titans franchise quarterback. This team is good enough to win the AFC South, and they could easily overtake Jacksonville. Jacksonville right now is a little wobbly. In Indianapolis, like Will Levis, we still don't know how truly good Anthony Richardson is. One of these quarterbacks is destined to disappoint. Anthony Richardson, I think he could have a pretty decent year, but there could be more growing pains with him at quarterback as compared to Will Levis, just because Will Levis has had way more starts under his belt. With Anthony Richardson, the big thing that he needed his rookie year was reps, and he still doesn't have a lot of them at the professional level as compared to a guy like Will Levis. And having an offensive-minded coach in Brian Callahan should be able to help Will Levis ascend in his second season, because this is an offensive-minded league. Mike Vrabel, being the defensive-minded guy, not really being too good on the offensive end of things, didn't really do Will Levis too much justice. Plus, he had to overcome having a bad offensive line. Tennessee brings in Bill Callahan, Brian Callahan's dad, and Bill Callahan is a legendary offensive line coach. If offensive line coaches were able to get into the Hall of Fame, Bill Callahan probably most likely would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's how good this dude is when it comes to having good offensive line play. Good example is last year with the Cleveland Browns. They lost 3 starters on the offensive line at offensive tackle to season-ending injuries. And despite that, they still had one of the better offensive lines in the league in 2023. That was mainly due in part to how good of an offensive line coach Bill Callahan is. The Tennessee Titans, the left side of their offensive line, should be pretty good this year. You got Peter Skoronski at left guard. J.C. Latham is going to be starting for you at left tackle. I believe that that left side of that old line is going to be pretty good. What gives me pause for concern is the right side. You bring in an improved group of wide receivers for Will Levis to throw the football to. He didn't really have anybody outside of a Okonkwo, the tight end, and DeAndre Hopkins. You get Tyler Boyd. You sign Calvin Ridley to a massive long-term deal. So there's enough weapons for Will Levis to have a pretty big jump in year 2. And then your running back position, it could go either way. Tony Pollard, he hasn't looked the same ever since he suffered that injury a few years back. He lost a little bit of his explosiveness. Same thing with Tyjae Spears. He's a really good running back too. My only concern about Tyjae Spears is, there are some concerns about his long-term health. He has some knee issues that was a part of the reason why he fell a little bit during the draft, because I thought he was going to be one of the first running backs off the board. a few years back when he came out of Tulane. He has really good vision. He's pretty good after contact, but, there definitely were some injury concerns about him during the draft process. But offensively, Tennessee could go either way. This could be a really good offense. Will Levis could be a possible MVP candidate, but he also could be a giant whiff, and there could be a lot of false hope based on what we saw out of him his first season as, a rookie quarterback in the league. And plus, we don't know just how good of a head coach Brian Callahan is. He's never called plays before. We've never seen him coach, so we don't know how good his end-game adjustments are going to be, how he's going to look in late-game situations. Their defense also could be pretty solid. They got Chidobe Awuzie. You got a really good secondary. You also got T'Vondre Sweat. And you pair him up with Jeffrey Simmons, you got one of the better interior defensive line duos in the league. And you got a defensive coordinator that was in high regard. Anybody that comes from John Harbaugh's staff in Baltimore is always seen in a pretty high light. Mike McDonald got a head coaching opportunity with the Seattle Seahawks. And many Ravens fans thought that he was going to be the dude who was going to be replaced by the current defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. However, like Brian Callahan, we never seen him call plays before. We don't know how good this dude is going to be at calling plays for the Tennessee Titans defense. And the Tennessee Titans, losing Mike Vrabel definitely is going to be a big loss for that defense. Not saying that defense is going to play terribly, but Mike Vrabel is one of the best defensive minds in the league. So it's only fair to expect that defense to drop off just a tad bit. They also have some concerns when it comes to their ability to get after the quarterback. Outside of having Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons, there's nobody else on that defensive unit that has proven production at being able to get after the quarterback at a high level. Now, you have a lot of guys that are good rotational pieces, such as Arden Key, Sebastian Joseph Day, who's pretty good against the run, but I had concerns about that pass rush. And their linebacker unit, you lost FAU alumni Azeez Al-Shaair to the Houston Texans. That's a big loss, and you're replacing him with Kenneth Murray, who's one of the worst inside linebackers in the league, and he's a bust. So that defense, they could be really bad. This could be one of the worst defenses in the league, despite the talent that they have on that unit, just because you have concerns about their ability to get after the quarterback. You don't know how good of a play caller you have as your defensive coordinator. So as much as I like what Tennessee has on paper, NFL games aren't won on paper. They're won on the field. And the floor for Tennessee is extremely low. They could be a 4 or 5 win team this year if everything goes wrong. But if everything goes right, they could be competing with the Houston Texans for the AFC South title potentially. That's what makes Tennessee the NFL's biggest mystery team this year in my eyes, because you don't know what the hell to expect. Most teams you look at and you're able to give them a really good projection. Most of us, we look at Jacksonville, we could see them being a 9, 10 win team. At worst, they're a 6 win team. You look at the Tennessee Titans, though, you really don't know with Tennessee. There's a lot of gray area with the Titans, and it's just a huge mystery how all of this is going to pan out. I'm going to say this. They got a football team. And they got a way better team from a talent standpoint than what they had last season. But you lose Mike Vrabel, one of the better head coaches in the league, really underrated, able to win despite not having a lot, but he didn't know offense. You bring in an offensive-minded coach with this being an offensive-minded league. Teams now, trending towards having offensive-minded coaches. So this definitely was a decent hire based on trends. But we don't know just how good of a play caller he is, just like we don't know how good of a quarterback Will Levis truly is. There are some people that believe he's a franchise quarterback. Other people, like myself, I'm in wait-and-see mode. So depending on how Brian Callahan and Will Levis perform this year, it's going to have a giant impact on determining how good the Titans are going to be. And even if these two guys play well, not just play well, but if Will Levis plays well, then that means that the play calling from Brian Callahan also is pretty good. But what about the defense? You got a good offense, but your defense could still be your weakness. So there are a lot of reasons to be high on the Titans, but there's also a ton of reasons to be low on them as well. And it's really hard for me to find a middle ground with them. You know, I was doing some record predictions a couple of weeks ago, not my official record predictions, but I was just going over, just doing it off the head without doing too much research. And I had the Tennessee Titans as TBD because I really don't know with them. They got a pretty difficult schedule, but they got a talented team. And I truly don't know how to assess this team going into 2024. They're one of those teams that when it comes to over-under win totals, I'm going to just leave them alone because I really don't know what to expect from them. They could be really good. I could see them winning the AFC South, surprising a lot of people, but I also could see them coming in last place. You know, it's just so many questions about them, but also there's so many things to love about them. So I don't know how to feel about the Tennessee Titans this year.